could literally throw this on the trash pile of Star Trek, Star Wars, Terminator. Hi guys, Geechu64 here, and today, well, we're going to talk about Game of Thrones. That's right, it's another Game of Thrones video. I'm pretty sure the banners gave that away. So I would have to say that my channel grew a lot during Game of Thrones final season, and not for the way that I wanted it to. I always wanted to grow my channel, but I also always wanted a good final season of Game of Thrones. And this may sound crazy to a lot of YouTubers, maybe. I would prefer to have a smaller channel, an even smaller channel than I have, and I just wanted a good season. Like, I don't want to do videos where I say this sucks, and this is terrible. But if it sucks, and it's terrible, then I'm going to call it out. As a matter of fact, I even did a intro in anticipation of doing my reviews of each individual episode in the final season. I even did a couple videos where I predicted which characters were going to die, and maybe how they did. Those didn't get a massive amount of views, and neither did my episode 1 review or my episode 2 review, because they were positive. Hi guys, Geechu64 here, and today we're going to be talking about the final season of Game of Thrones. This is Season 8, Episode 2, titled A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and we are going to talk about that today. Let's do this! However, episode 3 of the final season of Game of Thrones is where things just hit the fan. I think I was one of the earliest people on YouTube to call out how terrible it was, and how much of a disappointment it was, and it just progressively went downhill after that. Never got any better. Hi guys, Geechu64 here, and today I'm not going to do a review for Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 3. I'm not going to do it. I might do it later, but right now I just want to talk about the end. Sorry, I'm starting to get worked up and I just started the video. So in this video, I kind of just wanted to talk about where we are with Game of Thrones now, a year after its death. And I say death and not ending because that's what it was. It was a death. It was a bloody, gory death. The Mountain took Game of Thrones' head and squashed it. Now, a lot of people said that the last couple seasons, season 6 and 7, were pretty much already in a downhill trajectory, and I kind of get where they're coming from. I still enjoyed season 6 and season 7. A lot of problems with season 7. I got what people had problems with. Obviously, the pacing was being sped up. Some rules of the universe that was built, the world building, seemed to have been broken or bent to create certain narrative lines that they wanted to go along. And so I can see why some people didn't like season 6 or 7 or season 5. Either way, I still liked it. And the reason why was because at least in those, the characters still acted like the characters. The characters were still themselves. So regardless of maybe how messy the writing was in those, you can argue the writing was messy. The characters still felt like the characters. You know, I was still invested in what was going to happen. And you can get a pass with that as long as the characters are written the right way. Season 8, that's when it all fell apart. That's when the characters didn't act like the characters anymore. The thing dialed up to, 5,000 to try and ramp up and tell the end of the story in the fastest way possible. Completely incoherent. Again, I could rant forever on that, but really I wanted to look at where we were with Game of Thrones a year later. So as far as the impact on the fandom for Game of Thrones, obviously I think everybody pretty much can acknowledge the fact that the majority of the fan base did not like season 8. They didn't like the final season of Game of Thrones. Now, some people hated it more than others. I really hated it. Like I said, it was a big mess. But there was a petition that was floating around, and I think it's close to like 2 million. 2 million people signed this to remake season 8. Again, I've said this before in a previous video. People who signed that, majority of them knew that you weren't going to get a remake of season 8, and you knew that wasn't going to happen. It was just telling HBO how upset we were with the final season. And if there was some acknowledgement of that, it would make a world of difference. I think D&D were just in a hurry to go do their Star Wars movie, and they just wanted to be done with Game of Thrones. And you can tell that when you watch it. It's just a mess. It's just a rushed up mess. And then they got canceled from that Star Wars movie anyway, probably due to a lot to the backlash from Game of Thrones. And a lot of people say that, a series finale is really difficult to do. And obviously there were going to be people who weren't going to be happy. And that's always the argument that gets thrown out there. But there's plenty of shows that have nailed a series finale. Breaking Bad, even Lost. Lost was not a great season series finale at all, but I mean, in comparison to Game of Thrones, it really wasn't that bad. And that used to be the quintessential. That was a terrible, series finale. I would say Dexter was the worst series finale I had seen. But of course, that's all been thrown out the window because Game of Thrones is the worst series finale I've ever seen. And usually around this time, I go back and rewatch the show. Like every year, pretty much since it's come out, I go back and watch the previous seasons right back here. I put them in, go through all the seasons as anticipation of the new season. So I've rewatched this a lot. I've rewatched Game of Thrones a lot. I have not rewatched Game of Thrones since the final season came out, and I didn't think it would be such a big problem. I thought I could put it in the back of my mind and go back and watch them and still enjoy them because I had so much fun and enjoyment out of it. And like I said, you can argue the later seasons weren't as good, but all in all, I'd say everything outside of season 8, particularly season 8, episode 3 onward, it's still fun to watch, still enjoyable to watch. The problem is the context of the ending. The ending of any show is what the audience is left with. So if you don't nail the ending, that's really what the final thought is on the show. So you can have a bad beginning. For instance, Star Trek Next Generation. I'm a big Star Trek fan. And the first 2 seasons of TNG, there were some good episodes, but overall, it was not really that good. Like you go back, and I usually don't even go back into the first season of TNG. When I go back to rewatch it. Why? Because it didn't find its footing. It wasn't sure what it wanted to be, or, when it wasn't dialed in yet. But that show has gone down as like one of the best shows of all time because it progressively got better. Like it got better as it went on, and it ended on a high note. But when you go back and watch it, you can watch those earlier things and know that, it's going to improve. It's going to have a solid ending. It's going to have a good ending. And when you have a bad ending and you go back and watch the earlier seasons of Game of Thrones, you know what it's all leading to, which is a big dumpster. It's a big trash fire. So I haven't brought myself to go back and rewatch them. And, HBO may think that it doesn't matter because the show's over with and they got their money from the people who paid for HBO to watch the final season. So what does it matter? But it does matter. I can prove that why it matters just with me individually. For instance, these banners here. My original plan was to get all the banners. I think there's like 8 of them. I wanted all the sigil banners. Not that I have room to put them, but I wanted all of them. I could interchange them or, swap them out or do whatever. And my plan was to get those after the final season came out. But I didn't buy them. So there, money lost from that. Other thing, I own every single season of Game of Thrones. I own all of them. I bought them as they came out. The weekend they came out, or the week they came out, because the movies are released on Tuesday. I went to the store and bought these. I think 2 of them are probably pre-ordered on Amazon, but I bought these the week they were out. I didn't buy the final season because I know I'm never going to watch it again and I don't want it tainting my shelf. So I own every single one. So there you go. There's another $30, $40. I think when they came out, they're like $40 usually. So $40 missing, right? And if season 8 was solid and it had a good ending, I would have bought the massive box set. So there's a box set. Here's a picture of it. There's a box set that came out that looks really, really good. I actually saw this at Best Buy. I was like, this looks really cool. But then I remember, I don't want season 8. I don't want it. So no matter how cool it looks, I don't want season 8. And season 8 taints that whole box set. It taints the whole show. So I didn't buy that. So I would have spent $200 and something on that. So there, you got $200 you missed out on because I didn't buy the box set. $40 you missed out on because I didn't buy the individual final season, which I would have bought both if they were good. So that's $240 plus, because the box set was more than $200, I think. The other banners, which that could have been another $100 and something. So I mean, you have like close to $400 plus any additional merchandise that I might have bought, because I've bought other Game of Thrones merchandise. You're talking about $500 just that you missed out on because the final season was terrible. And I canceled my HBO subscription after that because I just didn't want anything to do with HBO. Yeah, that's monthly subscription costs down the tube. So I'm just one fan. There's other fans. Game of Thrones was a huge thing. So the fact that you think that it doesn't matter because it's already over with, it's been a year and everybody's got over it. Yeah, like people are probably still upset about it. But really, I don't think people are as upset as just disappointed. It's just one less thing that people are fans of. It's one less thing that people really care about or are going to invest any money in. The IP. They just aren't. You could literally throw this on the trash pile of Star Trek, Star Wars, Terminator. Literally the amount of franchises that are completely ruined in the last 5 years. I mean, geez, almost all the things I grew up on, anything they try and do new with the franchise just is terrible and awful. And most of it comes down to bad writing. I'd say 80% of it is just bad writing. The ideas are terrible. And Game of Thrones didn't escape that. And again, as I said earlier, if HBO realizes at this point, regardless if they officially say anything, they realize the disappointment of the fans. There was originally multiple prequel series that were in variety of works. As season 8 was airing, you had The Long Night, you had like a Targaryen style prequel they were looking at. They had a couple different things that they were working on. And The Long Night seemed to be the one that was being made. Like, they literally had a full cast. Allegedly, they shot the first episode, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't followed it in a few months, but I'm pretty sure they shot it the first episode, and it didn't get picked up. You know why? Same reason I said earlier. This is what I said 8 months ago about The Long Night. I don't care as much about The Long Night now because when you had your chance with the White Walkers, you ruined it. The Night King was a pointless villain, a very anticlimactic villain. And the fact of going back and understanding the origins of where the White Walkers came from and the Long Night and all that stuff originally was a great idea, but the whole time you're watching it, and this is also the problem with prequels in general, the whole time you're going to be watching that prequel, you're going to be thinking about how it ended in Game of Thrones. And it ended in a way that majority of people hated. So that automatically weakens and kind of in a way ruins what you're trying to do with the prequel before it even gets out there. So there, yeah, that's why. Nobody cares about it. Nobody cares about the White Walkers anymore. They've been ruined, so it doesn't matter. So then they were moving forward with House of Targaryen's prequel, allegedly. They're supposed to air in 2022. Targaryens back there, they're in the same boat as the White Walkers. The whole house doesn't exist anymore. Daenerys' character was ruined in the final season, and she's dead. There's no one to carry on that lineage, so again, it comes back to anything you do with a prequel. If you do a prequel, whatever it is you decide to do, it has to fit in with what actually happens, which we already know. So when you already know the ending, there's not as much suspense. So that's inherently what happens when studios try and do prequels. So while I do think a prequel series of Game of Thrones could work, especially if you get the right person in there, don't ever hire D&D again. I think a cooler story would have been, what is it, the Dance of Dragons. So the Targaryens coming over and conquering Westeros and making the Iron Throne. I think that could be a cool story. Or Robert's Rebellion to, take out the Targaryens. Both of those I think are more interesting stories. But at the same time, like I said, I probably would check them out, but my hype meter is like really low. I don't know. What do you guys think about this? It's been a long time since I did a Game of Thrones video, and it showed up on my my history. I was like, oh, it's been a year. It's been a year since the end of Game of Thrones. It's been a year since I cosplayed as George R.R. Martin. Yeah, I think I pulled that off pretty decently. I did a video about Westeros World. This was a fan thing that I did, a breakdown of maybe explaining how Season 8 takes place in Westworld. If you want to check that out, that's kind of my preference on how I want to think Season 8 ended. I feel like it's an out of sight, out of mind thing for Season 8, and as long as I don't watch it, it doesn't exist. That's how I'm approaching it. But Emilia Clarke said it best when somebody asked her about the fan backlash.
There was a little backlash on the last season. There's some critique. What did that feel like?
Well, you know what? It was profoundly flattering, is what it was. Is because when someone cares that much that they're ready to make such a noise about how they believed the characters should have been finished and how the story should have gone. That's just enormously flattering. That just shows how much everybody loved it. So.
I love that glass half full Emilia Clarke.
Every time, baby, every time.
See? Emilia Clarke nailed it. That's the thing. Fans matter. Fans matter. If you want to know more of my thoughts on Game of Thrones post Season 8, watch that Emilia Clarke video. I go into more into depth, I think, about what I think about Game of Thrones and kind of how it failed and what the status is. That's 8 months old, so this is an update video. 1 year later after Game of Thrones. I think overall Game of Thrones is still a disappointment, and time has not made that any better. It's still bad. I'm not angry about it anymore. I'm just, like I said, stack it up on the other franchises that have been killed. There's just not as much stuff for fans to latch on to anymore. And again, it's mostly due to bad writing. Those are just my thoughts. I don't know. Maybe you guys think something different. Maybe you're still mad about Game of Thrones. And obviously you can tell I'm not on my set. This is my Blu-ray set. I am in the process of moving my set. So the set as it has been for the last 2 years has been completely dismantled. It is being rebuilt. And eventually I'll get back to that. So all the videos I'm doing more recently are going to be on my Blu-ray set or a podcast style or my green screen, something like that, while I'm getting my set back up. So thank you, subscribers, for checking out this video. Let me know what you think about Game of Thrones right now. What are your thoughts on Game of Thrones? Do you even care anymore? I'm really interested. So if you comment below and let me know that. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, share, do all the YouTube stuff, or don't. I'm not a beggar. I'm Heat264, and I always tell you the truth.